Watching from the comfort of their living rooms or over the Shabbat dinner table, we wish you a very peaceful and restful and joyous Shabbat. To those who are joining us here in the Beit Knesset, particularly our friends from the cast of Parade, which will be produced at Chapel of Chapel and beginning its run late in July. We're thrilled to have you, and especially its director, Mark Taylor. We'll begin with our Kabbalat Shabbat service, and I invite you to turn, please, to page 645. The prophet Isaiah talks about a time where nations wouldn't fear one another and that each would live in peace. Goy el goy cherev, lo yilmedu od milchama. Lo yisa goy el goy cherev, lo yilmedu od milchama. I'd like to invite everyone to try as follows. Too easy. And please continue. Lo yisagoy el goy cherev, lo yilmedu od milchama. Lo yisagoy el goy cherev, lo everyone once more. Now turn please to page 653. Hashamayim tfilat hadam hachol v'hayam rish rush shel hamayim berak hashamayim tfilat hadam. Eli, Eli is a song based upon a poem written by a national heroine of the state of Israel by the name of Hannah Senesh, a Hungarian girl who came on Aliyah to pre-state Palestine, trained as a paratrooper, and ultimately decided to return behind enemy lines to Hungary. There she was captured by the Nazis, subjected to torture, in an attempt to reveal her sources, but she never did. In 1979, it was my great honor to meet her mother, Hannah Senesh's mother, Catherine, in Israel, where she settled. And I learned that Catherine Senesh, the mother, was brought to the prison in Hungary, and that Hannah was told that if you only reveal your secrets, you'd be able to see your mother. She refused and saved the lives of those partisans. Let's try it again. Eli, Eli, shelo yigamer leolam, hachol v'hayam, rishru shel hamayim, berak hashamayim, tfilat hadam, hachol v'hayam, rishru shel hamayim, berak hashamayim, tfilat hadam. We turn back in the prayer book in our Sidurim to page 126. Yedida nefesh av harachaman, Yedida nefesh av harachaman, Meshoch avdecha El Ritzonecha, Meshoch avdecha, La 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 la, El mul hadarecha, Yarutz, Yarutz avdecha, Kemo ayal, Yishtachave lalai, la 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 la, El mul hadarecha. One of the first songs that I would have learned as a little kid is Hinei ma tovu manayim, how good and beautiful it is to be together with brothers and sisters. And it goes like this. Hinei ma tovu manayim, shevet achim gam yachad. Together and once more. 2, 3. Hinei ma tovu manayim, shevet achim gam yachad. Hinei ma tovu manayim, shevet achim gam yachad. Hinei ma tov, hinei ma tov, la 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 la. Hinei ma tov, hinei ma tov, la 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 la. Where's my rhythm section? 1, 2, 3. Hinei ma tovu manayim, shevet achim gam yachad. Hinei ma tovu manayim, shevet achim gam yachad. Hinei ma tov, hinei ma tov, la 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 la. Hinei ma tov, hinei ma tov, la 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 la. I'd like to again welcome those who've just joined us. I see you. Well done. And ask if you would please to turn to page 128. The service begins with a portion known as Kabbalat Shabbat, the welcoming of the Shabbat. But we welcome not only the spirit of Shabbat, but also all of us who have come from our hermitages into a common space to celebrate this special day. And there on page 129, we say, may the door of this synagogue be wide enough to receive all who hunger for love, all who are lonely for fellowship. May it welcome all who have cares to unburden, thanks to express, and hopes to nurture. May the door of this synagogue be narrow enough to shut out pettiness and pride, envy and enmity. May its threshold be no stumbling block to young or straying feet. May it be too high to admit complacency, selfishness, and harshness. May this synagogue be for all who enter their doorway to a richer and more meaningful life. Trust this to Aaron. We continue now on the very next page, page 130. Lechu neranena, lechu neranena, lechu neranena ladonai. Lechu neranena, lechu neranena, lechu neranena ladonai. Naria, letzur yishenu, nekadma fanav betodah. Naria, letzur yishenu, bizmirot naria lo. Lechu neranena, lechu neranena, lechu neranena ladonai. Lechu neranena, lechu neranena, lechu neranena ladonai. And on the facing page, page 131, Yismachu Hashamayim, Yismachu Hashamayim, Yismachu Hashamayim, V'tagel haaretz. Again, Yismachu Hashamayim, Yismachu Hashamayim, Yismachu Hashamayim, V'tagel haaretz. Yiram hayam, Yiram hayam, Yiram hayam umelo. 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 Yismachu Hashamayim, Yismachu Hashamayim, Yismachu Hashamayim, V'tagel haaretz. Page 138. Friends, one of the quintessential melodies, lyrics, and prayers of the Shabbat is Lecha Dodi, which regards the Shabbat much as we would a bride on her wedding day or a sovereign. And just as we would welcome a person of such standing to our homes and hearts, so too do we welcome the Shabbat, which comes with its promise of shalom, of peace, and of menucha, of rest, and of oneg. Now this chorus, which sounds like this, comes around many times, and I'm sure you're going to get it. Page 138. Lecha dodi likrat kala, Panei Shabbat nikabela. Lecha dodi likrat kala, Panei Shabbat nikabela. Here we go. Lecha dodi likrat kala, Panei Shabbat nikabela. Lecha dodi likrat kala, Panei Shabbat nikabela. Stanza 1. Shamor v'zachor b'dibur echad, Hishmi anu el hamayu echad, Adonai echad u'shemo echad, L'shem tiferet v'litila. Here we go. Lecha dodi likrat kala, Panei Shabbat nikabela. Lecha dodi likrat kala, Panei Shabbat nikabela. Verse 2. Likrat Shabbat lechu v'nelecha, ki hi mekor haberacha, merosh mikedem nisucha, sof maaseh b'machshavat tchila. Lecha dodi likrat kala, P'nei Shabbat nekabela, lecha dodi likrat kala. P'nei Shabbat nekabela. On the top of the very next page, page 139. Hitorari, kiva ore, kumi ori, uri, shir daberi, kevod Adonai alayich nigla. Lecha dodi likrat kala, P'nei Shabbat nekabela, lecha dodi likrat kala, P'nei Shabbat nekabela. As is our custom, we now rise and face the entrance to the synagogue, much like we would at a wedding. Boi v'shalom ateret bala, gam b'simcha u'v'tzola, toch emunei am segula, boi chala, lecha dodi, lecha dodi likrat kala, P'nei Shabbat nekabela, lecha dodi likrat kala, P'nei Shabbat nekabela. We remain standing for another moment and invite forward perhaps Sandy to light the Shabbos candles. On page 118, you'll find the bracha or blessing for the Shabbos lights. Amen. As these candles give light to all who behold them, so may we, by our lives, give light to all who behold us, as their brightness reminds us of the generations of Israel who have kindled light, so may we in our own day be among those who kindle light. I'm anxious to know with our cast here, how many of you have appeared in Fiddler on the Roof at one stage in your career? Does this mean anything to you? Right? Okay. We continue now on page 144. Remain standing for the Chatzi Kaddish. Yitkadal v'yitkadash shmei Rabbah, Yalma divrach hirutei v'yamlich malchutei, b'chayechon v'yomechon, u'v'chayei dechol beit Yisrael, Bagala, uvizman kariv, ve'imru, Amen. Yehi shmei Rabbah mevorach, leolam ulamei almaya, yitbarach, ve'yishtabach, v'yitpoar v'yitromam v'yitnasei, v'yitadar v'yitaleh, v'yitalal shemei dekudesha, berichu le'ela, min kol birchata v'shirata, tushbechata v'nechemata, damiran v'alema, ve'yimeru, Baruchu et Adonai hamevorach. Baruch Adonai hamevorach leolam vaed. Won't you please be seated? What a joy it is to be together, you know? You can take your staying home in the nice warm, come out here, it's pretty good. We continue together in Ivrit on page 148 in the language of Jewish spirituality, saying, Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, asher bidvaro ma'ariv aravim, b'chokhmah poteach sha'arim, uvitvuna mishane yitim, umachalif et hazmanim, umesader et hakochavim b'mishmeroteim barakia kirtzono. Borei yom v'layla, golel or mipnei choshech v'choshech mipnei or, uma'avir yom umevi layla, umavdil ben yom uvein layla Adonai tzvaot shemo. El chai v'kayam tamid yimloch aleinu leolam va'ed. Baruch atah Adonai hama'ariv aravim. Everlasting love you offered your people Israel by teaching us Torah and mitzvot, laws and precepts. Therefore, eternal our God, when we lie down and when we rise up, we will meditate on your laws and your commandments. We will rejoice in your Torah forever. Day and night we will reflect on them, for they are our life and the length of our days. Never remove your love from us. Blessed are you, Eternal One, who loves your people Israel. Together, Ve'ahavta et Adonai Elohecha v'chol levavecha u'v'chol nafshecha u'v'chol meotecha v'hayu hadvarim ha'ele asher anochi mitzavecha hayom al levavecha v'shinantam levanecha v'dibarta bam V'shivtecha b'veitecha uvelektecha v'derech uv'shochbecha uv'kumecha ukshartam le'ot al yadecha v'hayu letotafot b'neinecha uchetavtam al mezuzot beitecha uvisha'arecha. Thus you shall remember and observe all my commandments and to be holy to your God. I am your eternal God who brought you out of the land of Egypt to be your God. I am your eternal God. Adonai Elohechem Emet. This sequence of prayers, beginning as we have tonight with Ahavat Olam and continuing with Ve'ahavta, each speak to the nature of the relationship between God and God's people Israel. It's not one of lawgiver and citizen. It is a relationship that is based on ahava, upon love and mutual responsibilities. I will bring you out of the land of Egypt, and you will serve me. And to this day, we are grateful for the many bounties and blessings and goodness that has been given to us. I'd like to now direct your attention to page 157. This is our opportunity for the first time to read responsively in English. As it says, always read responsively, right? If you're going to drink and drive, always read responsively. In a world torn by violence and pain, a world far from wholeness and peace, give us the courage to say there is one God in heaven and earth. From bondage in Egypt we were delivered. At Sinai we bound ourselves to your way. Though our failings are many and our faults are great, it has been our glory to bear witness to our God, keeping alive in dark ages your vision of a world redeemed. What follows next is a passage from the book of Exodus, chapter 15, a song of Geula, a song of redemption, which broke out, the Torah suggests, almost spontaneously as the people realized that they had last won their freedom. Mi chamocha v'Elohim Adonai, mi kamocha nedar b'kodesh, no ratihilot o seifelle, no ratihilot o seifelle, ma'alechutecha ra'u vanecha, bokei yam lifnei Moshe u'Miriam, zeili anu ve'amru, Adonai yimloch leolam voed. V'nemar ki fadadonai et Yaakov, ugoalo miyad chazak mimenu, Baruch atah Adonai, Gal Yisrael. It says of the Shema Yisrael, the beautiful passage from Deuteronomy 6:4 that we recited earlier, that it's to be recited each day, pamayim b'chol yom, twice each day. As part of the evening Shema, there is a ritual attached to it known as Shema L'mitah, the bedtime Shema, which includes these words on page 160 and 161. Hashkivenu Adonai Eloheinu l'shalom v'ha'amidenu malkeinu l'chayim. What a beautiful thought to consider when laying down after another long day. Perhaps you'd like to read with me on page 161 at the top. Let there be love and understanding among us. Let peace and friendship be our shelter from life's storms. Eternal One, help us to walk with good companions, to live with hope in our hearts and eternity in our thoughts, that we may lie down in peace and rise up waiting to do your will. Blessed are you, Eternal One, whose shelter of peace is spread over us, over all your people, Israel, and over Jerusalem. Baruch atah Adonai, haporei sukat shalom aleinu, v'al kol amo Yisrael, v'al Yerushalayim. V'shameru v'nei Yisrael et ha-Shabbat la'asot et ha-Shabbat le'dorotam berit olam beini uvein v'nei Yisrael oti le'olam ki sheshet yamim asa Adonai et hashamayim ve'et haaretz uvayom hashvi Shabbat vayinafash. Now together, here we go. Yai lai 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 ya lai 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 v'shameru v'nei Yisrael et ha-Shabbat. I'd like now to invite absolutely everybody to please rise and continue individually, either in Hebrew or in English, or to merely take a moment's time for meditation and personal prayer between pages 164 and 180. And we'll resume together in just a few moments. Adonai sifatai tiftachu fi yagi tehilatecha. Atagi border laman Atakadosh vishim hakadosh. Say Adonai lo b'yamach. Kilo tamu chasadek ameolam kivinu lach v'hokulam yibalach v'kman shimcha makim. Shalom rav al Yisrael am chatasim. Please feel free to be seated if you've completed your prayers. In the 1970s in North America, there was an explosion of contemporary Jewish music written by very talented young people. Often this music was debuted in Jewish summer camps for the severely overprivileged of North America. They'd go to camp, they'd come back 8 weeks later, absolutely over the top with excitement about their Jewish experience. One of the teams of writers that was working at that time were two men, one named Jeff Klepper and the other Danny Freelander. And this is now, more than 50 years later, the most popular of their compositions, well known to our congregation, and I hope that everyone will enjoy singing together. Shalom Rav on page 178. Al Yisrael Amcha Tasim Leolam. Shalom Rav Al Yisrael Amcha Tasim Leolam. Ki Atahu Melech Hador Lechol HaShalom. Shalom, Shalom Al Yisrael Amcha Tasim Leolam. Shalom Al Yisrael Amcha Tasim Leolam Tov Be'einacha Levarech Et Amcha Yisrael B'chol Eitu B'chol Sha'a B'shlomecha Shalom Rav Al Yisrael Amcha Tasim Leolam Shalom Rav Al Yisrael Amcha Tasim We conclude together this portion of our service with a prayer for peace at the bottom of page 178 in the Hebrew, saying, Baruch atah Adonai hamavarech et amo Yisrael b'shalom. I have a Facebook group that I belong to. It's the Yiddish word of the day. And the Yiddish word for today is fakakte. You know what this is? That's what this microphone is. I put it on the stand and it moves on its own. It's a fakakte microphone. I would like now to introduce you to my new friend Mark Taylor, who is the director of Parade, which will appear beginning on the stage at Chapel Off Chapel on the 27th of July. He's brought together a magnificent cast, and it's a marvelous show. And it's my pleasure to have Mark come join me here on the bima, on the stage, if you will. And I've prepared a few questions. Mark, you ready to answer them?
I'm ready.
He's ready. He's a polished performer from way back. All right. So if you'll grab up the microphone here you go. And I'll take the other. You've heard something about Parade already from Rabbi Gary? A little? Did anybody catch the magnificent performances of both Montana and Aaron on Studio 10 on Tuesday? Oh, what you missed, I can't tell you. It was so good, they didn't even believe it. Okay. So, Mark, welcome to Temple Beth Israel.
Thank you very much for having us. I tell you what, if you wanted to welcome a bunch of musical theatre performers, then sharing a bunch of beautiful music and prayers with us for 45 minutes is probably a good way to do it. So thank you very much for feeling.
You're so welcome. Mark, I wanted to challenge you, as I have my congregation on any number of occasions, and to ask you if you were stuck in a lift and was asked by someone to explain the story of Leo and Lucille Frank in just 1 minute, what would you say? Now, careful, there should be no spoilers. Everybody's going to have to pay to hear the full answer.
Well, Parade is a musical written by Jason Robert Brown and Alfred Urey, and it tells the story of Leo Frank, who was a Jewish American living in Atlanta, Georgia, back in 1913. So we're talking 50 years after the Civil War, and Georgia, of course, being a Confederate state. And Leo Frank was the superintendent at a local pencil factory, and there was a murder and rape of a 13-year-old white Christian girl, and the guilt was put onto Leo Frank. And we see the trial of Leo Frank and what transpires there. And in the second act, what we see is the fight from Leo and his wife Lucille to clear his name. And what we're seeing, that whole setting behind this trial, behind this case, was a world in Georgia that was full of anti-Semitism, of racial intolerance, of political unrest. It was a very complicated time. And so this musical investigates what was happening, why it was happening, and why it shouldn't happen again.
Thank you. You know, Mark, I received a Jewish education in the U.S. and learned many, many years ago about the Leo Frank case, and was keenly aware, even as a young kid, how Jews and people of color in the South were discriminated against. Could you tell us how, living here in Australia, and as someone maybe from a non-Jewish background, how you came to first learn about this story and to appreciate its universal message for these audiences here in Melbourne?
Yeah, well, whenever I look into a show that I'm going to work on and decide whether it needs to be staged, I'll ask the question of why now? Why is this show relevant now? And upon learning about Parade, and to be honest, apart from a couple of songs, I didn't know Parade very well. I knew some beautiful songs, one called You Don't Know This Man that Lucille sings, and a song called All the Wasted Time, which you're actually going to be blessed with a little bit later tonight. A very hopeful piece. I thought this is a beautiful, hopeful show. Unfortunately, maybe not the case for the entirety of the show, but upon learning about the show and reading it and understanding it, I could see so many similarities of what is happening in Australia at the moment, where we're at a bit of a precipice of history repeating itself in a number of ways, and our gullibility when it comes to media and the news that we're fed, and the institutions that we listen to. And so what I saw was a story that should be told as a reminder of why we shouldn't repeat history.
That's a great answer. You know, Jason Robert Brown, if not the GOAT, is one of the great composers working on Broadway today. How does he achieve through his musical score to resolve the tension and to tell the tale of Leo and Lucille and Mary Fagan and all of the other auxiliary characters?
So Jason Robert Brown wasn't actually the first choice of Hal Prince, and Hal Prince was the original director of Parade. He wasn't the first choice of composer. The first choice of composer was Stephen Sondheim, who I'm sure some of you have heard of. Sondheim, for whatever reason, passed on Parade. And luckily, this 24-year-old Jewish boy, Jason Robert Brown, came to light and wrote this incredibly complex music. Because you're right, it was such a chaotic, messy time in Georgia and Atlanta, and we're seeing so many different narratives and so many different points of views from these characters. And what Jason Robert Brown has done beautifully has expressed musically all these different characters and their wants and their needs and their objectives, and overlaid them on top of each other. So it makes for a chaotic piano playing. We've got our beautiful associate music director, Ashton, over here. And sometimes the hands are doing two different things at once, maybe three different things at once. But I think in order to tell the truth of this story musically, it had to be robust and it had to be complex.
Well, apparently audiences enjoy Parade. It just won the Tony Award for Best Revival on Broadway, which is quite a coup. With all of those moving parts that you've just described, what inspiration, if any, do you draw from some of the previous productions of Parade done on Broadway and elsewhere? What is your sort of take on, for example, Leo?
It's a great question, and it's a funny thing with plays, with musical theatre, when you're not originating the show, you've got all these productions that have come in the past that you have to respect, and it's great for us to understand them and what they've done well. But also, no one wants a copy and paste. We want to see something new and original. And again, I'm very lucky to have our choreographer, Freya, that I've worked with a number of times. And we love being able to take a fresh look at something and something we enjoy doing specifically is leaning into something a little bit more non-literal. And it's a style we like to call magical realism, where the performances are natural and naturalistic, but the environment around those performances is allowed to be magical and symbolic and filled with light and dance and movement and music. And we think it's a beautiful way of telling a story, because we're already in music theatre land, and music theatre land is quite meta, and you can lean into that meta in order to really touch people, because music can touch people so much. May as well use it to its fullest extent, right?
Absolutely. You know, I find as I learn more and more about the story that my heart isn't large enough to contain the emotions in this tale. I struggle and am empathetic with the mother of Mary Fagan, the 13-year-old girl who was killed. And my heart breaks too for Leo and Lucille. It's a deeply emotional journey that the show takes us on. I want to talk a little bit about Lucille's character, given that Montana is here tonight. At one point in the soundtrack, she is described as Leo's mousy little wife. But she emerges, it occurs to me, as a very strong figure. Can you talk a little bit about her character development and so forth?
Yeah, I'm fascinated by Lucille Frank, because you're right. This is 1913. This is Georgia. Women didn't have the right to vote in Georgia. It was a different time, and it was a time when an expectation was that the man was the house. The woman would do what the man would tell her to, and Lucille strikes me as someone that didn't really like that, didn't want to obey by those rules. And towards the end of this story, I think we also discover that Leo loves that about Lucille, loves that spark and that fight in her. Because there are all these weird assumptions about characters, and one of them is of Lucille. But something I'd like to share about Lucille, I read an interview recently with Lucille Frank, which was, I don't want to give any spoilers away. How many of us know the story of Leo Frank? Can I just see a show of hands who've heard the story of Leo Frank before? All right, maybe I don't want to spoil everything too much. But a tragic situation happens in this show. And 4 weeks after that situation, Lucille was interviewed, and Lucille forgave the people who demonstrated a terrible act of violence. She forgave a lot of them and understood that they may have been fed lies from horrible people, from horrible, powerful people. And she saw them as victims. And I think that says a tremendous amount about a human that can see the why of people around her. So yeah, she was definitely a strong human.
She may well have been familiar with the Jewish concept of slicha, of forgiveness, which is demanded of the Jew, especially at the holidays of Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur, where we forgive others. That's an amazing strength that I wasn't aware of. Having talked a bit about Lucille, I wanted to turn finally to the role of Leo Frank. What makes Leo such an especially demanding role to play? And where were you able to find this talented young actor, Aaron Roba?
Well, I think I'm not the one that should be answering about the demands of Leo and the character. But it truly is. I mean, this is his and Lucille's story, but I mean, for the second act of this story, Leo barely leaves the stage. He's in prison, and we're just watching him having to endure this. It's a very demanding scene, and a really tricky person to navigate, because everything that I've read about Leo Frank was that he was a very divisive human. Not just amongst the haters, but amongst people that he worked with, his family. He was spoken about as being a bit of a jerk. And to play that character and to navigate it as someone who can still be seen with love and empathy is very challenging. So we had our work cut out for ourselves. And I'd seen Aaron a couple of times in shows in Sydney, and he'd always stuck in my head. So knowing that Aaron was interested was wonderful for us, because we needed someone that would be able to completely inhabit the role of Leo Frank. And I know, no nepotism at all, but he truly is wonderful, and we're very lucky to have Aaron.
Thank you. Ashton, I'd like to call you forward, and Montana and Aaron as well. Mark, would you tell us about the song that they're going to sing?
I'd love to. And as they're getting up and
Of course.
figuring out where they're going to stand and where the microphones are going to hang out, I'd also just like to introduce everyone else who is seated up here at the moment. So maybe just a stand and a wave. We've got the lovely Adeline Hunter, who's playing Mary Fagan.
Oh, wow.
We have got James Frampton, and James is playing Frankie. We've got Nick Davey Green, and Nick is playing Governor Slayton. We've got Ashley Walwyn, our stage manager. We've got Georgia Barron, and Georgia is playing Iola Stover. We've got the lovely Matt Hearn. Matt is playing Watson, and our choreographer, Freya List. And as well as those wonderful people, we've got Ashton, of course, and Montana and Aaron. This song that we're going to hear is a moment of peace and connection for Leo and Lucille in the second act, where for the first time in a long time, they're able to share with each other how they're really feeling.
That sounds about right. I will never understand what I did to deserve you, or how to be the man that I'm supposed to be. I will never understand, if I live 1,000 lifetimes, why you did the things you did for me. Just look at you. How could I not be in love with you? What kind of fool would have taken you for granted for so long? All the wasted time, all the million hours pushing you away, building up my walls, all the days gone by, to glare, to pout, to push you out, and I never knew anything at all. I never knew anything at all.
I will never understand how all the world misjudged you, when I have always known how lucky I must be. I will never understand how I kept from going crazy, just waiting there till you came home to me. Now look at me, now that you're finally here with me, now that I know I was right to wait, and everyone else was so wrong for so long. All the wasted time, all the million hours, years on top of years, still too proud to cry. All the days gone by, to feel that I don't satisfy. touch, roots too strong to fall. The day is gone by to never show I loved you so, and I never knew anything at all.
I never knew anything at all.
Thank you, Montana. Well performed. Shkoyach. Wow. That was very special and different. And I appreciate so much the efforts made by Marcus and Isaac. Well done. Thank you so much for being with us. Everybody, Montana and Aaron, we look forward to seeing you and the cast beginning late in July at the Chapel of the Shabbos. So we're going to move to the conclusion of our service now and turn to page 586
Thank you, Rabbi. Temple Beth Israel acknowledges that the Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people are the first peoples of Australia. The Banyurong people of the Kulin Nation are the traditional owners of the land on which Temple Beth Israel is located, for which they have never ceded sovereignty. We pay our respects to their elders, past and present. Shabbat Shalom, everyone. Shabbat Shalom to those who are here in the sanctuary this evening and to many of you who are watching us online. We know it's cold, we know it's dark and it's drizzling, but those of us who are here in the sanctuary have had a special air of Shabbat. First thanks go to Jackie McGid, who made the soup that I think nearly everyone enjoyed before they came in for the service. Rabbi Gary, a special thanks for the musical festa that you have created this evening, and for way you have invited our special guests from Parade to share the service with us and to add to the service. I also want to thank Zach, who's probably still outside, who's taken full responsibility for our security this evening. We all know it's winter holidays at the moment, but our next session of the Hebrew classes will start on the 13th of July. There are several people already registered, but we can increase the numbers somewhat. There's a beginner's class and an intermediate class. We're currently doing a new intake of tribe, the introduction to Judaism. This will also start in July, and this class is a perfect class for those who are newly attending our services or bringing a loved one into our congregation for the first time. Those of us who have started the course with Danny Schiff, Reformed Judaism in a Digital Age, our heads are spinning and we're wondering where he's going to take us. There's 2 more weeks for those who would like to join us at this late stage, but also have recordings of the first 2. I think now I'm going to hand over to Rabbi Gary, because he will speak about the Shabbaton, which is planned for the 2nd of September, and he will then take us into Kiddush for the evening.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you so much, Sandy. On the 2nd of September, we have a Shabbat to remember. It will be held in the Euro Valley. It will begin at 9 o'clock and extend to 9 in the evening. It's going to be a full, immersive, 360-degree experience. There'll be music, there'll be learning, there'll be spiritual prayer, there'll be fun activities, and of course, being a Jewish function, there'll be lots and lots of food. So I hope that you'll make plans to come along, register, take the program today. You can scan it on your phone, and you can go right to our registration page. Thank you so very much. I'm now going to invite forward both Montana and Aaron to lead us in Kiddush as well as in Hamotzi. Please rise.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam borei peri hagafen. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kishana b'mitzvotav v'ratzavanu b'shabbat kodsho b'ava uvratzon yichilanu zikaron lema'aseh breshit ki hu yom techila lemikrai kodesh zecher letziat Mitzrayim kivanu v'acharta ve'otanu kidashta mikol ha'amim v'shabbat kodshecha be'ava uvratzon Inchaltanu Baruch atah Adonai Mekadesh HaShabbat.
I'm not going to sing it. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech Eloheinu melech haolam hamotzi lechem min haaretz.
Amen.
Good Shabbos, everyone. Please take this occasion to greet those seated to your left and to your right and front and behind. There's Kiddush wine, there's whiskey, there's challah in the back for everyone to drink.